why I'm so deeply involved. Okay, I can see
All
it's
right.
now recorded. I'll just go back to screen one here. 1 second here. I just got a pop-up on here that's not letting me take it down. Okay, here we go. Okay, cool. So yeah, once again, the presentation is going to be about how to become a healthier, more physical volleyball athlete by training smarter instead of just harder. So what I'll be covering today is just who I am. So who is Ried Hall? How to run effective volleyball practice. Do you guys see on my screen? Does it still say this meeting's being recorded right now? Can you guys see that? Okay, never mind. Sorry, I'm going to share this again. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to go over how to run effective volleyball warmups, how to implement workouts in practice, different recovery strategies, or understanding kind of how to balance things out for their training. So, how to balance out between volleyball workouts, school, days off. Like there has to be some kind of balance. And at the end, I'm just going to talk to you about how to jump higher because I always get questions regarding how to jump higher. But first, I'm going to start off with who I am. So, I'm Coach Ried Hall. Um, I want to kind of just give you guys my story because I kind of think it paints a good picture of what I'm about to go through. So when I was in high school, I played both beach volleyball and indoor volleyball. And I was the short, skinny kid that didn't jump high. And so for me, I was always like, I wanted to jump higher so bad. I wanted to become a better volleyball player, but being short, skinny, and not jumping high is not like the best recipe to be a high level volleyball athlete. So if you guys hear a baby in the background, that's just my baby. But yeah, and so when I was 16 years old, I was really motivated to jump higher. So like I was super disciplined. I was very motivated, but I was just doing all the wrong things. So when I was 16, I started running 3 kilometers a day. I started doing a jump routine on the cement. And I managed to jump 0 inches higher, and I developed patellofemoral syndrome, which is like an overuse injury of my knee. So although I was like motivated, I was disciplined, I was just doing all the wrong things. And things never actually started to change for me until I got into my final year of high school. And that's actually when I met my strength coach. And we just started making consistent, small, weekly improvements. And over the course of a year, everything changed for me. So if you fast forward a year later, I ended up gaining 8 inches on my spike touch, ended up making our national team for beach volleyball. So I was an outlier because I was pretty short on our national team. And so for me, that's what made me fall in love with like the physical training. If it wasn't for me getting stronger, faster, jumping higher, there was no way that I could kind of play at the next level. But I stopped playing professionally. It was like it's now like 13 years, which makes me feel old. But over the past 13 years, all I've done is train volleyball players. So I've been both like a volleyball coach at the club level, but I've been doing strength and conditioning this whole entire time. I've worked with NCAA teams, Canadian universities, Olympic level volleyball players, national team athletes, club teams. Like I've worked across the whole entire like training spectrum for volleyball. I'm actually partnered with 2 strength and conditioning locations where I'm located, where we train a lot of like our local club volleyball teams in Ontario. And I'm also creator of like an online program that's, fairly popular. And I might reference it a couple times in the presentation. But let's get things started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is warm-ups and different strategies that you can use to warm up. But the first thing that needs to be talked about is what is the actual like purpose of warm up? Like, why do we actually warm up before volleyball? Does it actually do anything? So the reason we warm up is one, we want to increase our heart rate. Two, we want more blood flow to our muscles. We want to help improve range of motion, and we want to prepare our neuromuscular system, which means the ability for our muscles to contract and respond. So a really good warm up helps you improve your performance, but it also potentially helps you reduce some chances of getting injured. So for example, if I was to get out of a car, and right now it's pretty cold out, so we're driving, it's cold, and I'm just to go into the gym and I'm going to do a max jump, I'm not going to jump very high and it's not going to feel very good. And that's because there's not much blood flow to my muscles, things aren't contracting well. So an effective warm up is definitely beneficial. Now, there's a couple different types of warm ups. So the first one I'm going to talk about is like a formal warm up. This is probably a lot of what you guys see pretty regularly, is what I call a formal warm up. And so what I'm going to do momentarily is I'm going to break down the components of a formal warm up, and I'm also going to give you a formal warm up. So you kind of so you'll have access to videos of everything. This actual slide that I'm taking through, you guys will get access to this. So you'll have access to all my notes here, but I also link a lot of the exercises. Like anything that's underlined goes to like a video. So it's all linked. So you guys can access those videos. So with the presentations, you're going to get warm-ups, you're going to get workouts, you're going to get all different types of things, and you'll be able to access video demos so you can access those things as well. Another thing I just want to cover before I jump back into this, if you guys have any questions or anything, just drop it in the chat box. And I'll answer those questions as I go along with the presentation, but I'll also answer any questions that I don't kind of get to as I'm moving through at the end here. But let's go over what a formal warm-up is. So there's a few different components to it. So the first part of a formal warm-up is doing some like low intensity movement. And now you're probably only going to do this for about 2 minutes. And now that could be skipping, jogging, doing like low intensity track drills. And I'll show you some videos of this stuff in a second. So you do that for about 2 minutes. And the goal is just to get your heart rate up. Nothing's intense. And then you'd move into the next part, which is called our dynamic stretching component. Now, you really only need to spend, if this is like before volleyball practice, doing like 2 to 3 minutes of this. You don't need to spend like 10 minutes doing dynamic stretching, okay? The next component is activation exercise, how you actually get your muscles contracting. And you do that for 2 to 3 minutes. And then we have what's called an athletic buildup. So first, I just want to show you like 2 dynamic stretches that I think are really important for you guys to have in your warm-up, just because they offer really high value. So can you guys see my screen? Did it go to my Instagram?
It's still loading. So it's at the moment it's a black. It looks like it might still be loading.
Can you guys don't see a video here?
Not yet. No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Let me go
Let's
back.
see. Yeah,
Yeah, 1 second. I'm just gonna have to change the screen share here.
no worries.
Can you guys see my Instagram post here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an example. I put on the good background music, but this is an example of a Spider-Man lunge. And the reason why dynamic stretches like this one are really beneficial is because it connects a bunch of movements together. And once again, don't feel like you got to memorize this movement. You'll have access to these videos. It's linked in the presentation. So you can see through these dynamic stretches, we're actually moving through various volleyball specific positions. Like we're working under side lunge, reaching overhead. So when you do dynamic stretches, you want like 2 or 3 just really good ones that you can add in. You don't need to do a ton of them. So you want ones that essentially offer a lot of value. So I'm just going to slide back into the presentation here. 1 moment. Can someone let me know? Can you guys hear my baby in the background? Just not sure what you can hear with
No, we
my mic. You
actually
can't
don't
hear
hear
my
anything.
baby? I got a
No.
Okay. I got
Yep.
a 2-year-old daughter. Her spike touch is 3'6", if you guys are wondering. That makes her vertical 2.5 inches. Not that we're keeping track or anything. So yeah, so once again, we do low intensity track drills. The next thing is we move into our dynamic stretching component, right? And that's what I just showed you there. And then we want to move into something that's more activation exercise. Like we want to get the muscles contracting. So what I'm going to show you is just a quick video about some lower body activation exercise that you can do. So I want you guys to watch this. Sorry, 1 moment here. All right. So you guys should be able to see this video. So here's just some examples, if you have a mini band, on how you could spend like 3 minutes just really getting all the different muscles in your body warmed up. So once again, when it's activation exercise, it's just about getting your muscles to contract, getting blood flow to your muscles. This is what's going to make you feel a lot more primed and prepared to do things like jumping, like moving into more athletic based work. So you do these activation exercise for anywhere from like 2 to 3 minutes type of thing. You could have lower body activation exercise. You could also have different upper body activation exercise. Upper body activation exercise would be exercises like, band pull aparts, planking variations, rotator cuff works, right? Those are generally your formal upper body types of exercise that you would move through. So I'm just going to come back here. So those would be your upper body activation exercise, and your lower body activation exercise. As I mentioned before, you also would do some, like you could have some lower body activation exercise and some upper body ones here. And I'll show you, I'm going to show you a full warm up. And then after we move through activation exercise, you want some sort of athletic buildup. And I'll just give you some quick examples in this video here, but you want something where, you can start getting your heart rate up. You can start priming your body so that you're ready to jump. One of the big issues that I see is that when you warm up, sometimes it either gets way too slow and you don't feel prepared to jump just because you're just doing dynamic stretching, or you just move too fast with things. But here's just some examples. You can just see where we're moving through. We're gradually building the intensity of jumping or movements, but starting to build in more athletic work, right? I mean, you might not have access to do something like this, but exercise, we're just starting to get a little more intense and start to gradually build up the intensity of the things that you're doing. So once again, this could be like low intensity jumping. This could be, doing some approach jumps or anything like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I'm actually just going to give you a full warm up here, right? And once again, you guys have access to all of these things. One moment. All right, cool. And so you can see this is like an example of a full warm up here, right? And these are all linked to video demos of how to do these things. But basically, this whole warm up would take about 12 minutes to complete. So in this example, I'm going to skip for 60 seconds, just doing some sort of regular skipping. Then I'm going to move into Spider-Man lunge plus thoracic opener and quad stretch, side lunge, and overhead reach. So this is our dynamic stretching component. So when we were on the previous slide, those first video of those two dynamic stretches, those are what those are here, right? And then we'd move into activation exercise. Here's three really good examples. So the first one is what we call a lunge iso hold. And I'll just share my screen for this one. So this is what you call a lunge or a lunge iso. So doing something, we're getting the muscle to contract hard, right? So our activation exercise. So in this position, we're just going to be going into like a lunge iso hold, and we'd hold this position for about 30 to 60 seconds per side. If you're working with younger athletes, you might want to dial it back to doing like a wall sit or something less intensive for them, depending on kind of where they fit in. And so we'd move through a series of activation exercises, right? And those are really important because it's just the formula of moving in that process really allows your body just to feel more ready to when you move into explosive things, right? And so I'm going to go back here. I'm sorry that I have to go back and forth between these screens. But okay, so you'd have your lunge iso hold. There'd be a single leg RDL, right? And I could show a video for that one a little bit later. You have a banded star drill, which is just basically one of our upper body activation exercise. You do shoulder taps. So this would be your activation component. And then you would have an athletic buildup here, okay? So these would be the three exercise athletic buildup. And this is really important. So this is what kind of like this whole part here from A to G would probably take you 6 or 7 minutes to do, right? And then once you're done this, you know, in the next 4 minutes, we probably want to be ready to max jump. So here's three exercises you can move through. So the first one is pogo jumps, 3 low to 1 high. So now we're starting to build into the athletic movements. We're starting to build the intensity of what we're moving through. 1 second, let me share this. So basically what we're doing here, you make 3 low hops and then 1 big hop. So now we're starting to prepare the muscles to be ready to contract harder, to be more responsive, right? To move into, you know, our bigger jumping based exercise. So generally this portion here, like you're going to, like say you have 10 minutes to warm up on the court, like you're going to want to get the intensity up in some of the things that you're doing before, you know, you start moving to those max jumps. So that would be an example. Then I'm going to show you another example here. 1 second. This one's called push to load. And this is basically preparation for your approach footwork, right? And so this would be something, you know, that would fit really well before you do your max approach jumps. 1 second here. All right. So you should be able to see my screen again. So this is called push to load. And all this is really, you know, a drill to kind of prepare yourself to get warmed and ready to max jump. So we're just working on the final 2 steps of your approach. You obviously don't need to use a band here. This is Sophie Bukovic, by the way, that you've seen a lot of the videos. So last year, her and Brandy finished second at the World Championships for beach volleyball. I've trained her for about 5 or 6 years, but you can see this is just a good drill to do, you know, and you're only going to be doing this for about 60 total seconds, right? And then the final one, what I would do is I'd start moving into some approach jumps, right? So I'm going to share my screen back to the presentation. I want to come back here. Right. Okay, so you can see that's just kind of a full warm up that's going to prepare you to really get ready and to go. Now, I'm going to show you next the other kind of warm ups. Now, I like these warm ups as well. Now, this is less of a formal warm up. This is you playing games to prepare your body. So, for instance, if you're doing a lot of long, boring warm-ups, your athletes sometimes aren't stimulated enough to play. It gets boring, right? So sometimes we like to mix in games. So like different games that you could play would be like, for example, like volleyball tennis. If you guys have played this, where you got 2 lines and you just pass and you're running and it going over the net, right? You pass the ball, you got 1 pass over the net, and the other person passed over the net and you guys are switching, you're competing type of thing. So just different games across the net that are lower intensity. Or you could play something like short court, right? You got all these short courts, you're chipping the ball over, bump, set, over, but there's no jumping, there's no max arm swings. So the idea when you play games as a warm-up is it's something that's low intensity or lower impact, but it's getting our body warm and we're super stimulated, right? Or you could play like tag games. And I'm going to show you a really cool tag game that I like. This one's called Shuffle Tag. So I'm going to share my screen here and I'll turn on my volume for this one as well. All right, cool. So I'm going to play this one for you. You're just shuffling around. You can change direction, but you can't step into the square. So you got to shuffle. And normally what we would do is the time would go for 7 seconds. If you're able to touch the athlete within 7 seconds, your side gets a point. If you're able to stay away from 7 seconds, the other side gets a point. So the reason why I love this is because it's competitive. To get more out of the athletes, they work harder. It's also fun, and it's also training lateral movement or lateral. So what I'm trying to, I'm just going to pause that. So what I'm trying to get across here is that you don't always need to do like all your warm-ups to be so formal and slow and boring. I think it's important to have that in your bag and be something you can pull out and have, and that's mainly what you do. But you could also combine a formal warm-up and things that are more game-like. And what I mean by that is, you could play a couple of games and get their heart rate up and then, then move into a few activation exercises or do a couple dynamic stretches. Like you could combine them. And so what I'm trying to say is I've worked with teams, like I was coaching a 17U boys team. And this would have been this was a bunch of years ago, but they were particularly a very nerdy group. Like they were a nerdy group. They played a lot of video games. They were a great team to work with, but they were like the stiffest athletes you'll ever meet. Like their range of motion was super poor. And we always did formal warm-ups and we would do it like 15 minutes before every practice. I consider a 15-minute warm-up to be pretty long for like club level, but for them, they really needed it. And because we were practicing 3 days a week, that means they were getting 15 minutes of like essentially mobility training 3 days a week. And what we noticed, it's 1 to 2 months into our practicing and they're no longer as stiff. They're still pretty stiff guys, but they were moving a lot better. They really did progress. So for them, that was really important. However, if I was coaching like a 13U girls team, I would not have them do a formal warm-up. I would keep it less formal. You might want to add in like a few dynamic stretches. And I'm going to show you some other warm-up like examples in the future, but I would have them maybe just like do a few like speed exercise, like more of the activation exercise. So like a fast feet or, single leg hops or progressively jumping or play more games with them. Like you want them to make it fun. The only issue is if you give them a very slow and boring warm-up, especially if it involves a lot of thinking when they're young, they're just not going to be prepared to play or do the next thing. So with younger athletes, especially younger female athletes that are generally not quite as stiff as males, you don't need to do as much of the dynamic stretching. You can have a little more fun with the training. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here. All right, cool. All right. So I'm going to start talking and we're going to go back. I'll be going back into warm-ups because I'm going to be showing you guys some workouts and certain things that you can be doing. So I'm going to be referring back to some warm-ups and you'll have some more examples, but I want to talk about the makeup of a strength-based workout. And now don't get concerned if I move through this quicker because I'm going to be giving you more examples and actual workouts. Okay. But there's really 6 categories of exercise or 6 categories of movements or things you want to include in workouts. And so if you're going to create a workout for your volleyball team, say that's in practice or something you're going to do at home, a really good thing to do is just choose one exercise in these 6 categories. So these 6 categories are like a squat or a lunge pattern. So essentially a lower body exercise where you're pushing, right? You're pushing the ground away from you. So that'd be a squat or a lunge pattern. Examples of those, and don't get too caught up about the names. I'll help you guys out with this. Is goblet squats, reverse lunge, back squat, step ups. Obviously, the exercise needs to be appropriate for the athlete, but that'd be category 1. Category 2 is a hinge pattern. So these are movements that are working on our hamstrings or glutes and our back. And those would be like RDLs. Don't worry if you don't know these names. RDLs, single leg RDLs, glute bridges, hip thrusts, trap bar deadlifts. Those are exercise that fit into that category. And then you have upper body push exercise. Those are push-ups, shoulder presses, dumbbell bench press. You have upper body pulling exercise. So those are like your rowing variations or pull-ups, right? You've got core variations. You've got planks, crunching variations, hollow body holds, side planks. Like those are example of core based exercise. And then I have my own category for feet and ankles. So those would be like calf raises, soleus raises, and tibialis raises. Once again, don't get caught up on the names because I'll go through this deeper. And I also, in the future workouts, I have them linked to exercise for you. But when I'm designing a workout, I'd really want to focus on those 6 categories, right? I mean, you could split it up. So say you're going to do a workout in practice, you could do, like just 3 or 4 exercise, one from each of these categories, rotate through 4 times, right? That's your 10-minute workout, right? Or you can make it longer, include all 6 categories, right? So you can design, it's just that you want to focus on generally having similar amount of exercise from each category is pretty important, especially if you're working with a youth athlete. Okay, so this is a full workout for you guys. And I'm going to kind of just spend more time on going through this workout because I think this is super valuable to you. All the exercise are linked to videos. You could give these to your athletes to do. These are workouts they could do at home or you could do in practice, okay? And now, specifically this workout, I made it body weight so anyone could do. So you don't need any equipment for this one. But first, I want to take you through the warm-up, okay? So the warm-up that we have here, it's going to be a really short warm-up. You could even do this for practice. So warm-up, you're going to perform 1 set of each exercise. So first, we're going to jog or skip for 2 minutes. Next, I'm going to take you through these exercises. We're going to move into what we call lateral leg swings. And this is a really easy one for you guys to have your athletes execute. 1 second, sorry, the sharing screen is slow. All right, cool, sorry. So this is an example of a lateral leg swing. Once again, all these exercises you have video demos to. Just going to relax my hip and swing. So we would do a lateral leg swing. And the next one we would do would be a frontal leg swing. So it's essentially the same thing. I can just see if I can type it in here. So this is a lateral leg swing. The next one's, this could be a faster way if I can just click into them here. Great. So this is a frontal leg swing. So I do a lateral leg swing. I do a frontal leg swing. And then all I'm going to do is include one more just mobility-based exercise. And the next one I'm going to show you is a really important one. It's really good for thoracic mobility and kind of prepare for you guys to start, the athletes to start attacking a ball. So I'll show you what that one looks like. Also a great stretch for our chest and also our shoulders. Now you want to try to be pushing down with your top knee into a foam roller or a ball or some other object. That's the key for instant control. Then I'm going to slide my hands forward. I'm going to trace my hand around. My eyes are going to follow my hand all the way around. And then once again, you're going to feel that nice rotation to your back. Now, once again, you're trying to push the knee down. You're trying to keep the hand down. Your hand might rise, but that's okay. We're just trying. And then the last exercise that I would include in their warm-up would be something to get their muscles charged up. So this is called a multi-directional stability jump. And these type of single leg hop exercise, hopefully it pops up here. Actually, that's Martin Reeder in the videos here. You guys are from British Columbia. You guys should know Martin Reeder. That Martin Reeder's 2012 beach volleyball Olympian. He was just in these other videos you see here. But this would be the last one. So these multi-directional stability jumps.
Exercise are single leg stability jumps. So now these aren't about jumping high and explosively. It's about stability control. It's really working on your braking mechanisms when you land to stabilize. So we're trying to make sure that knee's not falling in. That foot is stable when it hits the ground, and she contracts and walks in. So what she's going to feel is the muscle starting to burn.
So I'm just going to go back to, sorry, the presentation here. 1 second.
Hey, Reid, as you're doing that, just a quick question. Is it preference on that exercise to have no shoes on, or is it just kind of the situation that you guys were in?
Yeah. If I was to do it in practice, I would just have them with their shoes on just because practice. It's better if they have it with their shoes off. But once again, if you're in practice, I don't think you want to take off all their shoes and get them all dusty and stuff. Right. So it's not, that being said, it's not the biggest deal either way. Okay, cool. So this was our warm-up, right? Jogging, skipping for 2 minutes, lateral leg swings, frontal leg swings, sideline windmills. These are the multi-directional stability jumps that we just watched. You do 2 sets of 12 hops per leg. So what you're going to actually find, and you're going to be blown away, when you make your athletes do a small hop on like one leg, they can't even control it. They fall over. Well, what do you think happens to them when they land on one leg when attacking? Did you know it's like like close to 30% of landings happen on one leg in volleyball. And a lot of it is you can't control. You're off balance, you land on one leg, you absorb those forces. So it's really important your single leg strength to be very high and also have good stability patterns, right? So now we're going to part 2. This is the actual workout that we're going to be moving through, okay? And you can do these directly in practices. Once again, I made them all body weight, and I teach you how to progress all these exercises as well. So the first exercise, or the first block here, is there's going to be 3 exercises that they rotate through, okay? So the first exercise, I'm just going to stop my share here, is going to be single leg squats to a bench / chair. So I think this one is critical. Like I think like all volleyball, the thing that's so great about this exercise is that depending on whatever level they're at, it's still challenging because there's always ways to make it harder. And that's what I'm about to show you guys. All right. The workouts that I put in here too, that they're going to have access to. These are things you can just send to your athletes and say, just do 3 rounds of these 3 exercise. Do 3 rounds of these 3 exercise. It's going to take you 12 minutes to complete. Do this at home type of thing. And you know what I mean? And the athletes that do it are going to get some really good benefits from it. So the first exercise here, this is called a single leg squat to a bench or a chair.
This exercise is single leg squat variation to a bench or chair. Now, I'm going to show progressions to this exercise. So first start with the most basic variation and then get to the point where it's very difficult. That's a great exercise for strengthening our quads. And
It's a little hard to hear, Reid. I don't know if you can turn it up more on your end or not, but
our knee.
Is that better?
So for our level 1 variation, I'm just going to back it up a bit here. You're just going to come down slow to a bench or box, and you're going to come back up with 2 feet. So you can go down as slow as you can, and then bring both your feet so they're hip width apart, and then come up like a squat, okay? Now, the higher the box that you use, the easier it's going to be, the lower, the tougher it's going to be. And then if you go to the next level, so we're going to come down that single leg squat like we're doing in the last progression, but then you're going to come back up on that same leg, right? And if I want to make it a little tougher, then I got to go to something that's a little bit lower, right? Now, if you're doing this exercise and you're going to something that's lower, but you're not,
and you can just see, you could even progress it.
Then push through that heel and come up.
And so you can easily progress that exercise. It's something easy they can do at home. And obviously this last variation I'm showing with holding a dumbbell here, but your athletes should at a bare minimum be able to do this exercise. So the second exercise in this 3 is T's and Y's iso hold. So this is going to be the next one that we would add into that block. So we go single leg squat, we do these T's and Y's iso hold, and then there's a third exercise to take you through.
Exercise called T's and Y's asymmetric hold, okay? So the first one we're going to do is a T, okay? So I don't want to shrug my shoulders up to my ears. I just want to pull my shoulder blades back and squeeze and hold that position. So you can see how my shoulder blades are together, but I'm not shrugging towards my ears. You're going to feel the muscles in your back, the back of your shoulders, all working hard here. So the Y is the exact same thing, where I'm just going to lift up into a Y and hold, and all these muscles working hard. I place.
And then the third exercise, I believe, let me check what it is here, is a push-up variation. So we all know it like a push-up variation. So essentially you'd have that single leg squat to a bench, that first one I showed, those T's and Y's iso hold, and then you would do push-ups, right? You have 3 exercise, you make 2 to 3 rounds through those. So if I was going to implement this in practice, right, you could either do a longer workout where you're going to do all the components I'm going to show you, or you can just make it short. Choose like that block of 3 exercise, make 3 to 4 rounds. There's your 12-minute workout, 15-minute workout. You can do it at the beginning of practice, you do it at the end of practice, or you could tell them to do it at home. Right. And then I'm going to go into another block of exercise. So this is essentially the third block. Let me share my screen again.
Just a quick question on that, Reid, tying back to the first, so if they were to go through that workout program, would they need to do anything additional to be ready to play volleyball? Like if they were doing that, let's say at the beginning or before their practice, would they need to also do any of the warm-up, like additional warm-up stuff, or do you feel like they'd be pretty ready to go?
Yeah, what I would do is if you're going to do a workout, I would just do in the warm-up the only parts I would do like the actual warm-up where we just do like 2 minutes to get the heart rate elevated, do 2 dynamic stretches, and then move in the workout, because the workout's kind of like, it's going to build the intensity up, so that could be part of it. So you could make like a 15-minute routine, spend 5 minutes warming up, and then do 10 minutes of a workout.
Cool.
And that's your 15 minutes at the beginning. Okay, so here's the next part of the workout. So this would be the final block. So it's another block of 3 exercise. So you could do this as one longer workout where you do multiple rounds of this and then multiple rounds of that, or you could separate them from each workout. But this first exercise I'm going to show you is an important one. This one's a single leg RDL variation. And your athletes are going to be doing this from now. And one day when they're on the national team, they're still going to be doing single leg RDLs. So we might as well learn those now. So it's a very valuable type of exercise. One second here. Yeah, so this is also one you could easily include in their warm-ups. Okay, here it is.
For the single leg RDL, Maya's going to start with a small bend in this knee. She's going to hinge forward, so let's see that. Everything's staying in a straight line. She's going to come back. She's trying to keep this foot elevated off the ground if she can for all the reps. It's going to bring more stability component at the ankle and the foot. You can even do this exercise without wearing shoes, and this would make it even better. But let's see it with a knee drive. So if you add a knee drive, it makes it harder. There's a greater stability component. And if you want to take it one step further, you can even add some dumbbells to this exercise.
Okay, so that would be, sorry, I think it exited the share screen. So that would be the first exercise of the 3. We've got a couple more here. The next one is a wall dead bug. This is a really good core exercise to start with for all your athletes because it's generally, mostly everyone will find this one hard, which is great. It's a really good core exercise to really get the abdominals contracting. One second here.
Exercise called wall dead bug. So I'm going to start off pushing my hands hard into the wall, pushing my lower back in the ground, squeezing my abdominals. I'm extending one leg at a time. So I'm squeezing my abs hard and moving one leg at a time. While I'm doing this, I'm driving my lower back to the ground. If you want to make this harder, make your legs straighter. So once again, I'm squeezing my abdominals. They should be working hard and trying to avoid my lower back from arching or coming up. And I'm pushing my hands hard into the wall.
Awesome. And then just one more exercise is going to be just a 1-leg calf raise. So one of the things that you can do too, so with the templated workout that I gave you, sorry, can you guys see my screen here?
Not yet. No, it says Ried Hall has started screen sharing, but nothing came up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. One moment here. All right, cool. So what you can do too is like, you can see that like I put in a core exercise or there's like a quad dominant exercise, like a squat or a lunge. Like you could change the exercise, but keep it in the same category, right? We talked about it, like a lower body pushing exercise, a lower body pulling exercise, an upper body push, an upper body pull, a foot and ankle exercise. And there was one more in there, a core exercise, right? So you can just exchange exercise with those, but it's going to at least keep things balanced for you. So you guys can see my screen right now, right? This final one is just a single leg calf raise. Foot and ankle exercise and keeping them strong is critical.
A squat rack that you use a stair or any platform to elevate your foot. So she's going to allow her heel to come down as low as possible, and then she's going to go up as high as she can on her toe. So we're using one leg at a time. When you get at the top, you're going to pause and just feel the contraction in your calves. When you get down as low as possible, you should feel a little stretch. You can hold a dumbbell in the one hand to increase the resistance.
Yep. So I'm just going to come back here. So that's an example of the workout, right? So I'm going to go back into sharing the presentation here. So if we go back through this workout, you guys can see my screen again, right? Yeah. So if you have, and I saw one of the questions in the chat box is about, what if I only have a really short period of time to warm up? This warm up right here is perfect for a short warm up. Doing these exercises, like jog for 2 minutes, lateral leg swings, frontal leg swings, sideline windmill, do some multi-directional stability jumps. You'll be done that in 5 minutes. So something like that would be a really good short warm up to do. And I saw that was a question in the chat box. But if you look at the workout, right, you know how up here I told you, squat or lunge pattern, a hinge pattern, upper body push, upper body pull, core, feet, and ankles. We look at this single leg squat to a bench and chair. So that's an upper body squat or lunge pattern, right? T's and Y's, that's like an upper body pulling based exercise, right? The push-up variation is an upper body pushing exercise. The single leg RDL, that's a hinge movement, right? The wall dead bug is a core, and this one's a foot and ankle movement. So we followed in that workout this exact template where we pulled exercise from those categories. So you could change the workouts and the exercise, but try to follow those specific categories because that will keep all your training a little more balanced. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on here. So we're going to talk about just recovery strategies. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to recovery strategies is there's no recovery tool or method that will dramatically help a chronically overworked athlete other than taking a break or creating balance within their weeks or months. So what I mean by that is if someone's playing volleyball 7 days a week, doing all these workouts, and they're just doing way too much, there's no amount of sleeping, cryotherapy, foam rolling, nutrition, hydration to fix how overworked they are. When you're that overworked, you're simply the only thing that you can do is take a break, take some time off. Like these athletes have a capacity. And when they surpass that capacity, that's when they start to break down. So before I go into more details about like the recovery strategies, this is important to talk about. So there's many really common injuries in volleyball, like shin splints, patellar tendonitis, overuse of injuries of my shoulder, different shoulder impingements and things like that. So in general, overuse injuries are created because they're forced to do more jumping, more arm swings than they have the strength and structural tolerance to deal with, meaning they're doing more than they have the capacity to handle. So this can be in one given night. So I'll give you an example. So if you made me play volleyball, once again, I'm old and washed up here. So if you made me jump 50 times, I'm going to be okay. I can work tomorrow. I'm not going to be too sore. But if you made me jump 150 times, my knee's going to be swollen. I'm going to be in pain for the next few days. So you surpassed my capacity on that individual day. But what happens is you can also surpass that capacity in a period of a week or in a period of months, right? So there could be a capacity on a certain day, and it just adds up, right? So when your athletes start doing more volleyball and more of that high impact activity than they have the capacity to deal with, overuse injuries happen. And it's crazy. I should have linked it in here, but there's a study. It's like something is like, I can't remember the ages of the athletes, but I think it's adult volleyball players, but it's like adult volleyball players playing volleyball more than 3 days a week. It's close to 50% of them have patellar tendonitis to some degree, which is like an overuse injury of the knee, right? So the one thing that we want to be mindful is like, are we making the athletes jump more and do more high impact activity than they have the ability to tolerate? And that can be in a given practice or in a given week. And I'll give you an example. I think in Ontario, it's particularly bad for overuse injuries. And I think it's less bad than in BC, but in Ontario, we have really long club seasons. Like they're way too long and it's like 8 months from the beginning to the end. Like it's a crazy long period of time. And so like the coaches will do before Christmas break, they'll do like 2 Ontario tournaments and they'll have 2 exhibition tournaments. But then one year, Ontario Volleyball added 2 Team Ontario elite practices. So what happened before Christmas, they ended up having to play volleyball 6 out of the 8 weekends. And of the athletes that were in the clubs that were all doing the Team Ontario stuff and that, it was almost all of them were suffering it like some sort of injury and had to take a break. They all surpassed the capacity they have because the club coach was not concerned, didn't know as much, like, how much extra volleyball they were doing at school. They didn't realize how many extra practice, didn't realize, oh, okay, we add Team Ontario and these other things. And so what happens is they all got clustered together to just overwhelm the athlete. And then there was a lot of learning lessons that happened through the club coaches. And I also think like the Team Ontario and the provincial team in general, right? The balance of what they had got really out of whack. And then particularly in Ontario, this is going to be different than you. We know just based on so when I'm working with like clubs, we have clubs that do their strength and conditioning with us in person, but we also have an online component and app component. So we're constantly surveying our athletes to kind of see how they're doing. Like, what's your recovery levels? Like, are you improving on your exercise? There's X, Y, and Z happening. So we're really tracking to see how well they're doing. And we're able to get feedback. Well, like how many athletes right now aren't playing volleyball because they're injured? And we know in Ontario, the number one time where our injury rates are by far the highest is right now. It's in January. And the reason why this happens in Ontario is they'll be busy with volleyball up until like the Christmas break. And then they'll get 2 to 3 weeks where they don't play volleyball, which is really good. They need that break. What happens is a lot of athletes do nothing over 2 to 3 weeks. and then they go back to club volleyball, and the club coach is like, oh man, we have all these important tournaments coming up. So they immediately ramp up everything in practice so quickly. It goes from literally 0 to 100 miles per hour. That first practice back, they're jumping a ton, high intense gameplay, wash drill, one ball after the other. And they increase the intensity of what they're doing and immediately jump into tournaments. And because the athletes came from that break to being overwhelmed with the amount of volleyball they have, that's why we see a lot of overuse injuries in January. So when you get to like the university level, like I do programming for university teams, one of the most important things is making sure we know the appropriate amount of demands we're putting on a volleyball player. So for example, a university team, maybe they have a game on Saturday and Sunday, right? And then they have a practice on Monday, but Monday's practice, they're not doing any jumping. They're just staying down, right? Tuesday's practice is a little more intense. They do a little more jumping and they get after it more aggressively with their wash drills. Wednesday is more moderate. Thursday, they go harder in practice, and it's because it's to prepare for their upcoming match. So what I'm trying to say is there's ebbs and flows in the intensities of what you're doing. And I think that's really important for you guys to consider as well. Is they can't just go 100 miles per hour all the time. And based on, I don't think it comes from like just club practices, but it's the athletes that are doing club practices, another school sport, private lessons, strength and conditioning. They're just getting completely overwhelmed and they need a break, right? So one of the big things I really communicate with my athletes is, especially like a lot of these volleyball players, they're playing almost all year round, is we get them to proactively look into the future. We're like, we need you guys to look in the future and find out where do you have gaps where volleyball is a little bit lighter. And when you have those gaps, you have to build boundaries around and say, listen, I'm not going to do any additional volleyball right now. I'm going to do other things, my strength and conditioning, other sports or something, but you got to commit to it. But the problem that happens is both parents and volleyball players and whoever, they don't look far enough in the future, so they never build any boundaries. So they're always reacting to taking up the next camp, the next lesson, the next showcase, the next opportunity. But to be honest, development is very much a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like most of us overestimate the improvements we can make in the short term, but heavily underestimate the improvements we can make in the long term. So we need to make the long game, is what I'm trying to say, and make sure that we have balance. Okay, so back to my just kind of the slides here. So once again, there is no recovery that's going to out trump someone that's just completely overworked. But the next best recovery tools are definitely sleep, nutrition, and hydration. They are by far the next most important thing, right? There's lots of studies showing, if sleep's dropping on average below like 6 hours a night, like their chances of getting injured goes way up, right? The same thing with nutrition. I'm guessing most coaches here are like high school age coaches or like coaching the high school age volleyball like club in high school. Most of these athletes that we find that we work with, a lot of them don't consume enough calories throughout the day. Obviously, this is like a big blanket statement. A lot of them don't consume enough calories throughout the day, and they don't eat like on a frequent enough intervals, right? Like they should be really eating every 3 to 4 hours, whether it's like meals or smaller snacks, and ideally eating healthy. But we see a lot with these athletes is they'll eat a lot of junk, but they'll eat a lot of junk at one time. It's a big break, a lot of junk, right? So just making sure nutrition and hydration. And then this is, I think, really important to cover. So I get asked all the time, like, yeah, my kid's like been playing so much volleyball. They're like always broken down, but yet we go see the chiropractor. She's foam rolling, she's stretching, she's massage gun, she's cupping. And I'm like, it's because those are so insignificant as recovery tools. Like everything outside of sleep, nutrition, hydration, like supplements, foam rolling, stretching, massage guns, cryotherapy, cupping, all those things are a little bit helpful, but they're not going to change the amount of stress and breakdown that you do on your body. It's not going to make a big difference. Although I do like these things, I'm not saying don't do them. I think they might add a little advantage, but I'm just saying that like I just talk to a lot of people that think it can erase all the stress on their body that they can do, by taking those type of things, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next part. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is actually how to jump higher, because I think I get quite a bit of questions about that. But before I get into this, the next part, do you guys have any questions or thoughts that come to mind? I'm going to answer more questions at the end, but just anything that I've kind of gone over so far, whether it's talking about warm-up strategies or recovery or workouts, do you guys have any questions that immediately come to mind that you'd want me to tackle now before I go into the next part? If you do, I'm just going to give you guys 30 seconds right now to ask a question. Just write it in the chat box and I'll tackle it, and then I'll move on to the next part. But I'll give you guys 30 seconds here.
while we're waiting, I have a quick question. Do you have we kind of chatted about this when we were meeting beforehand, but I had an athlete that I do privates with, and she was doing private, and then she was going to dance, and I didn't know she had practice after that too. And so I was kind of like, yeah, I don't think that's a great idea for her to do those three things in a row. But then it was kind of like, well, when are we going to do it? When can we do? Because she's a setter, she wants to work on some stuff. But and in my mind, and I think I shared this with you, I feel like I have this idea like, oh, you should probably have at least like one full day of like rest or not doing anything structured. Like, but I'm not sure because I'm not SNC. But so like, is there any sort of like rule of thumb of like, hey, like, you should better to load up on a one day or a few days and then have like a full day off, or is it just kind of like, I don't know. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
so there's a few different strategies, and we really like have to use this, especially at the university level, is you do want to try to free up a free day, like a day that you have off. So like if someone's like has volleyball practice over the week and they're doing a workout program, it's better for some days for them to do a workout and practice in the same day if it frees up like a whole day off, where and that whole day off they could just do nothing, like nothing physical related, or like an easy recovery based routine or something that's like low intensity type of thing. So I do think it's really like you can't go week to week to week without having any days off. Like what essentially happens when you're just chronically like overworked when you're playing all the time, what happens, you're always trying to recover from what you did before and what you did before, and you just eventually get in this like recovery deficit. And it's crazy because I used to be in this all the time when I was in high school. I was constantly overworking myself, but I never knew I was overworked, and I was so just used to being stressed and overworked that I didn't know that's why my performance was suffering. And then I would get a break at some point in time, 5 days off, and then I come back and I'm like playing way better. I'm like, man, I got more bounce, I got more energy, I got more swagger. So in like the strength and conditioning world, generally if people are consistent with workouts for 4 or 5 weeks, you take what's called a deload week. And it's just basically an easier week, right? And the purpose is that so your body can recover, you can move on to the next phase of training, you can continue improving. I really think about it's the same way as in volleyball. So when I used to play beach volleyball, I always sucked from August 10th. This is like till August 28th. I always sucked for like that period of time. And basically what was happening was that I was playing with the national team. I was going hard and hard and hard and never give myself a break. And every year at that same time in August is when I would get burnt out and I would really be bad. I would be playing way worse for 3 weeks. And basically what would happen is it would force me to take some time off. And then what happened is I would normally finish towards the end of the season playing way, way better. And it was happening to me like every year. So it's just the importance of having breaks, I just think is crucial.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like three or four of the athletes I work with, privates, we had like a big snow dump here in the Lower Mainland, which shuts everything down. Not like the rest of Canada. Anyways, all of them play like we're forced to not do anything. All of them were like way better than they were like 2 weeks before, like across the board, different ages, whatever. Just because I think because they had that time off where they could their mind and their body could just like rest and like recover, and then they came back even better. So that's good for us to remember as coaches.
When I was training Sophie Bukovic as she was like leading up to like the year she finished second at the world championship. So that would have been last year. And we were working together in person. And we were measuring her vertical every Monday. But the reason why we were measuring her vertical every Monday is because how high she was jumping would show us how fatigued she is, right? So if she's jumping 2 or 3 inches lower, it's not because she's worse, it's because she's more fatigued. So if she had volleyball the whole weekend, and then we tested her on Monday, she was normally touching 2 to 3 inches lower. If she had the whole weekend off, she was normally touching 2 to 3 inches higher. And the reason we were testing that every Monday, because it would also determine the way we would train on that week. So if she's really fatigued on Monday and touching lower, I don't want to immediately ramp up her training, but if she's touching higher on Monday, it means we can put the foot on the gas a little more. So you guys would be surprised about how much a person's vertical ranges within the same week. And this is what stresses you guys out sometimes when you use the Vertec, the jump thing, and you jump and test it, is their vertical range by 2 to 3 inches, depending on how recovered they are, right? So it's something to keep in mind. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next part here, and I'll dig more in this. And the reason why I'm going to talk about how to jump higher is I think it connects some of these things together, but I think this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, is just not having a proper understanding of this. So how to jump higher. So first of all, we need to be mindful of how much extra jumping the athletes are doing while in season. Every volleyball practice is essentially a high volume plyometric workout overuse knee injuries are extremely common in volleyball. So every volleyball practice, you're doing a lot of repetitive jumping, right? You're jumping up and down. So it's a high volume plyometric workout, right? And a lot of coaches are like, man, I want my athletes to jump higher. I need them to do more and more plyometrics at home. And I'm like, the plyometrics are what are injuring your athletes. The reason, if your athletes are practicing 3 days a week and they're doing 3 plyometric workouts per week, because if every practice is a plyometric workout, they're doing it 3 times per week. And if they're not magically improving, like they're not magically jumping higher, it's because they're so adapted to doing those jumps that they're doing. That's why they don't improve anymore. So if they're going to jump a lot higher, the jump training, which I'm going to get into, needs to be more purposeful. It needs to be managed. But if they're going to jump a lot higher when they're in volleyball season, it's because they got a lot stronger, more powerful. Okay, but I'm going to move on to the next part here. Okay, so let's talk about how to jump higher here. And I'm going to go, I'll show you guys a couple of videos here, but first, how to jump higher. Number one, we need to get stronger. Like strength is your foundation. It's critically important. Like if you're going to make a big vertical improvement, you need to get stronger. Some athletes, by just getting stronger, jump higher, but some do not. What getting stronger does is increase the capacity of how much higher you could jump if you improve on these other areas, right? The second one is getting better at the actual skill of jumping. This is really better. So jumping is a skill, right? So if they can improve their approach mechanics, their ability to accelerate in their approach, their arm drive, their body positions when they're blocking, like the skill can help them develop. The third category is their power output. That's their ability to apply force quickly, right? The fourth category is reactive strength. So that's kind of like the speed at which you can get off the ground, right? So think skipping, small hops, and I'll go in more detail about this. Then the fifth category is body composition, but I wouldn't really focus on that in any way with if you're working with high school age athletes, I that wouldn't be something as a volleyball coach I would stress too much. But I want to go over right now about jump technique and what jumping looks like. So the video I'm about to show you is the differences between the beach and indoor approach. And I think this is pretty cool to see because it'll just give you guys a little bit of a better understanding. Do you guys still see my presentation? One second here. All right, so I'm going to share this with you guys.
From slow to fast, which
I just want
they're accelerating.
So I'm going to try and replay this here.
It's Coach Ried Hall. Today we're going to talk about the differences between the indoor volleyball approach compared to the beach volleyball approach. But before we do that, let's discuss some similarities. So with both approaches, you're moving from slow to fast, which means you're accelerating in your approach. The second last step is long. It's longer in indoor volleyball compared to beach volleyball. You're going to have a big arm drive and your torso stays relatively vertical. Your arms lead your hips. It's really important. Your arms lead the jump. Now for some differences. In beach volleyball, your approach is going to be shorter and more condensed. That second last step is long, but a little bit shorter than indoor. When you plant your feet to jump, you're going to plant your feet harder into the ground. Your feet are going to be on the ground for even longer. You're going to develop power through more of your bigger muscle groups. In indoor volleyball, your approach is longer. That second last step is longer, and you're more dependent on a really quick stretch shortening cycle to get off the ground quick. So you're not using as big of muscle groups when you get off the ground, but it's a faster ground contact time.
So what I was just trying to show you guys there's some common things that we want to see. And I just wanted to show you guys that because I know a lot of people ask me about approach mechanics and things like that. And maybe I'll show you guys a couple of videos on things like that, but it should be something that's like patterned in over time, right? Someone that approaches well, like they need to have a really long second last step. They need to have a fast arm drive, a tall torso, right? Those things are really, really important. In the slides that I sent you, I'm just going to share this again. One second. So in the slides that I sent you, I actually sent you guys a couple of videos on different approach mechanic things that you could do. I think it's in the warm up. Yeah. So if you look at these two exercises, the push to load and approach jumps, if you click the link to both of those are just video demos on certain things that we really want to focus on with your jump. Maybe I'll show you just this approach jump one and just looking at like some body mechanics here. 1 second. Fun fact, this is Sophie. When I met her, she just finished at USC. She won 3 national championships for beach volleyball there. She was touching 10 feet at the time. She's now touching 10.7. So I just wanted to tell you that we like her leading into the world championships over that period of 4 years of preparing. She made some pretty major differences. But check out her approach mechanics here.
Celebrated two-step approach. we're just really working on the final two-section approach and looking at speeding it up and getting you off the ground quicker, okay? So when we're doing this, if you're right-handed, you're going to start on your left foot, okay? So you're starting on your left foot, you're going to shift your weight forward a bit, and then you're going to take a really big step. That step being big is really going to help accelerate you. So watch, it's a big step, arms lead the jump, right? So weight on your left foot, drive, create that big step, arm leads the jump. I'm going to back it up here again. Another thing that's important is you see that you're staying tall. You don't want to collapse too far forward, or it's going to take even longer for you to get up. So take that big step, stay tall, the arms lead the jump, exaggerate the speed of you getting off the ground.
So I want to show you guys another video. So anyone that I work with like a lot of club volleyball players. So your arm drive, like when you jump on your approach drive, that arm drive contributes about 15% to your vertical jump, right? So if you were to measure your block touch and compare it like a static block jump and then compare it to your spike touch, like there's like a 15% or more difference, right? And so one of the things that you guys can teach your athletes or add to your warm up, it's called load to extend. And what you're going to be doing is just working on the sequencing of your arm drive. And this is a great warm up exercise. I would only work on this for about 30 to 40 seconds. So it's not something you spend a long time on. But if you can get your athletes to properly connect their arm drive, oh man, it's going to help them jump way higher. So watch this video here.
One thing that's not talked about enough.
Can you guys see my screen right now? Yeah, okay.
One thing that's not talked about enough when it comes to increasing your vertical jump is your arm drive and the sequencing of your arm drive. So your arm drive helps you get off the ground quicker and it helps you get higher. So from our lower body, when I jump, you know it's extension through my ankles, my knees, my hips. But what I want you to think about is your arms help accelerate that, right? So what I want you to think about when it comes to timing is my arms lead my hips. So my arms are accelerating my hips. So if my arms are slow, I'm stuck on the ground longer, and I'm just not going to get as high because I can't transfer my arms into that smooth jump. So one exercise I want you to work on, so you're going to set up like you're going to jump, you sit back, tall, and just extend up really quick. The timing is, you want to think your arms are leading your hips. You're going to set up like you're going to jump, you sit back, tall, and just extend up really quick. The timing is, you want to think your arms are leading your hips.
So I've been doing this for 13 years, like of working directly with volleyball players, and they often want to jump higher. And one of the quickest things you can get them, like to get them to jump 2 inches higher right away, is learning how to connect their arm drive with their jump and just learn how to like optimize their body positionings on their approach. And I mean, I think that's something you can work on in your practice, but just to be aware that those things are very, very helpful. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation here. 1 second here. Cool. Okay. So what I want to show you guys, actually, there's another one here. Okay. So I get a lot of questions about plyometric exercise as well. So plyometric exercise are movements that are really quick that depend on using a rapid stretch shortening cycle. So if someone does a box jump, like a standing box jump, that is not a plyometric exercise. When you're in like a loaded position and you jump, that's a jumping exercise. But a plyometric exercise is something where you're very quick. And so basically what happens is your muscles and the soft tissue, it lengthens and it rapidly responds. That's what's our stretch shortening cycle, right? And so plyometrics, a lot of coaches are actually like, should my athletes be doing more plyometrics? Well, there's 3 different types of plyometrics. There's extensive plyometrics, there's intensive plyometrics, and there's volleyball specific plyometrics. And I want to go over some of these because some of these are actually really good for you to do in season, and particularly extensive plyometrics. I'm going to show you a video on that first. So what extensive plyometrics are, 1 second, it's just gonna, I gotta have to change my screen here. So this is what extensive plyometrics are.
Stress, right? Take a lot of impact in that area. What I'm showing you is called extensive plyometrics. I want to explain to you why this might be beneficial to you. So what extensive plyometrics are, it's just sub-maximal jumping. So it's lower intensity jumping. And And what's happening when you're doing this submaximal jump, so this could be like skipping or the exercise that I'm showing you here, is that you're training and building the capacity of the musculature and soft tissue that kind of support the foot and the ankle, that whole area, right? And that's really important. So in volleyball, we're doing all of these crazy different movements, all these different high impact movements, and that area needs to be able to tolerate that stress so it can stay healthy. But the other thing that's cool about these extensive plyometrics is a lot of athletes, when they've been doing them for a while, they start saying they start feeling lighter on their feet. And so what happens when you're jumping, and I'm talking more of this ankle foot area.
Sorry, I'm just going to stop the share on that. But so what it is, extensive plyometrics are, it's like skipping, right? It's low intensity exercise. And the reason why that's important is it actually builds capacity of our soft tissue and the musculature in that lower area. And we know things like shin splints are really common, foot injuries, those type of things. It helps prepare that not only to be able to tolerate more and have more capacity, but also could potentially allow you to produce more power because that area just in general needs to be really responsive. So I'm going to give you guys just a video example of like a bunch of different plyometric exercise. Once again, plyometric exercise, they're really quick, right? It's very quick off the ground type of thing, not long loading, right? This is what makes it a plyometric exercise. 1 second here. So these are just a bunch of examples here. All right, cool. So there's essentially, oops. So there's 3 different categories. So the first one, as I mentioned before, was extensive plyometrics. That's low intensity jumping. Where you might want to use that is towards the end of your warmups. And you do it for like 30 to 60 seconds. So that could be like skipping rope or doing those small hopping variations. Intensive plyometrics is more what you guys commonly think about. That's like higher impact exercise where you're doing drop jumps. You're doing a lot of high impact jumping. Now, you want to limit that when you're in season. Because you're already doing a lot of high impact jumping throughout the volleyball season, right? You're already doing a lot of that in practice. So if you're adding more intensive plyometric exercise, that's like stepping off a box and jumping or hurdle jumps, like really high intensity, a lot of stress on your joints, is you want it kind of just sprinkled in throughout the week, like little its and bits of it versus doing a ton of it. Because when you're doing a ton of it and you combine that with practice, that's where overuse injuries happen. So you want to be very mindful with the amount of that you're doing, if that makes sense. So I'll show you just another video here. This is some more examples of all 3 categories of plyometrics, okay? So it's going to show both the extensive, the intensive, and volleyball specific here. 1 second. Sorry.
Exercise for volleyball. And I feel like this is a really confusing topic for a lot of people. Like, should you be doing plyometric exercise or should you not be doing it? Well, if you're in season, you got to understand that every time you play volleyball, it's a high volume plyometric workout, right? You're constantly jumping. But your vertical's not magically improving. It's because you're overdoing that stimulus already. So if you're adding in any extra plyometrics, it has to be minimal and it has to serve a purpose. But say you're in your off season, you've gotten stronger. That's a good time to include more plyometric exercise. You want to include some extensive plyos, which is like lower intensity jumping. You want to include some higher impact jumping where you're improving your power output. You want to include some multiple direction plyometrics, and you want to include some volleyball specific plyometric exercise. But when you're adding plyometrics into your training, it should be sprinkled into your training. You don't want to overdo it. Like doing a couple different plyometric exercises in a workout is good enough, but you don't need to do like 7 different plyometric exercises. Anyways,
all right, cool. So I'm going to go back here. I hope that's helpful, but I just got a question in the chat box here that I thought I would tackle. He says, I have 5 16U guys with patellar straps. They come in this way. Any sessions how I can offer them to continue to protect their patellar tendon. So patellar tendonitis is the worst. I had it all through high school and it is so annoying. Like it's frustrating. So I just want to give you guys like when people have bad patellar tendonitis, I want you to paint a picture on how it feels. So if you get into practice and you're jumping too quickly before your warm, it's just sharp, intensive pain in your knee throughout the whole entire practice. And it feels like it's like 50 minutes into practice before you're warmed up. And then practice finishes and you go into a car where it's a tight space and your knee is just throbbing. The next day it hurts you to walk up and down stairs. If you have practice that day, it's a super grind. You're jumping way lower. If you don't have practice that day, normally the day after you start feeling a little bit better and you practice, it starts getting irritated. So it's really, really annoying. And the problem with patellar tendonitis is obviously it's developed from doing too much. You're doing too much volleyball activity, right? So for those athletes that have patellar tendonitis or any overuse injury, an overuse injury of the shoulder or shin splints or anything like that, you do want to explain to them that you guys do need to look into the future and figure out when you can take some breaks because that's really important. The other thing you need to make sure that you do for these athletes is follow a warm up that I gave you, like the formula that I did. That's why we're doing a lot of exercise. We're showing you we're doing like a lunge iso hold or getting the muscles contracting because athletes with patellar tendonitis, if you get their muscles contracting and you get a lot of blood flow to the musculature and soft tissue that supports the knee, they'll feel way better. They'll be in way less pain and they'll be able to warm up quicker. So that's why it's really important to have good structured warm-ups. And a lot of it is because of those overuse injuries. I'm just going to go back and share my screen, but this is a good time for you guys to ask any other questions that come to mind. But I do have a couple more things in the presentation before, I take on some more questions. But in this last slide here, I'm not over yet. I got a couple more things I want to show you, but if you guys want to contact me, like once again, we can send you this presentation. This is my email to contact me. If you want to follow me on Instagram where I'm sending you a lot of those videos, I post just so much training content. Like you're gonna be able to go on my Instagram and go in there and steal full workouts that are like you can find, like I do youth workouts, I do different levels that you can steal. And even my YouTube channel, like I got high school age volleyball workouts on there that you can steal. So there's a lot of good information for you guys there. And I'll make sure you guys get access to this. But I actually want to share my screen and show you. I just want to show you some of the things that I actually do. I want to show you just an athlete and her profile because when I go into her profile, I'm going to show you just a bunch of workouts that we've done together. And I want to kind of show you just the way we structure training. And this will just kind of give you some more insight. So I'm going to share my screen here 1 second. Can you guys see my screen right now? You can. Okay, 1 second. All right, cool. So I'm assuming you guys can see my screen. So this is an athlete. Her name is Ashley. She's 14 and she's pretty advanced with her training. So she's been working with me for over a year. So you can see in here, this is in December where I'm looking at her workouts right now, but I structure all her workouts to complete, right? So you're seeing what I see and what she has access is to an app with all the different video demos and just easily to follow. But you can see when I look, here's just a workout that she's doing. So this is an example of a volleyball workout, right? And so in the app, she can leave like just videos to get feedback, right? So this is after her warm. This is one of like, the things we do at the end of warm-ups and just different dynamic stability stuff, just working on it and being able to stabilize on one leg, right? But you can see I'm able to like send her workouts. But the important thing is she can add videos. She can track her metrics in here. And you can just see the reason I just want you guys to show her working out is she's been doing this for a year. When she started, she was very, very new to it. And so why it seems like a lot of things she's doing is more advanced than you would think is because she's learned how to do these things over time. So it's a balance between working on strength, power. When we're working with younger athletes, we want to work on just the mixture of qualities, your strength, your power output, a little bit of plyometrics, your mobility, all of those type of things. But you can see she's pretty advanced with her movements, right? But one of the other reasons why I show you this is getting you to understand, look, she's doing this awesome. She's 14 years old. The reason why she moves so well is because she's developed the skill of how to execute her exercise. Just like in volleyball, how passing is a skill, like when you pass a volleyball, like you don't start off passing a volleyball very well. It's very difficult when you start, right? But you do more reps, it gets better and better. So one of the important things with training, you can just see it's pretty cool here how she does it in her home, right? And so this is after warm. This is an exercise where we're getting her knees to contract hard. So this is actually a really good exercise to prevent patellar tendonitis, but also if you have it, it allows you to get your quads to contract, right? And you can see I'm following the common categories that we talk about. This is a dumbbell squat jump. I actually really like this exercise, and I'll explain this to you why this might be one of the jumping exercises that's benefit for your athletes to do if they're prepared. So the reason why athletes don't jump much higher through just jumping a lot in volleyball practice is because they're adapted to that. But when you start adding some light loads when they're prepared, it can really help them with their block touch and just other movements. So I'm just trying to show you guys some of the stuff that we are working on, right? And so for her, that's an important way. So for the reason why she's being able to be successful is I can structure all her workouts. She can track her metrics. I can communicate with her. I give her different check-ins that she can fill out information, extract information from her. And I do this with both like teams and athletes. But more, I just wanted to share this with you guys just to kind of show you like you need these things in place. Like you should be like having ways where you can extract information about, how have they been feeling recently? What have they been improving on? What are they struggling with? Do you have any questions? Are you injured? And so when I'm working with my different clubs, the reason why it's important is because they're filling out these check-ins. This allows me to understand how many athletes on the team are not playing because they have an injury and common trends and things like that. And so sometimes what I'm going to say to you is you don't always realize how broken down and beaten up your athletes are because they don't say anything. So that's why I really like what I use, it's called type form. And basically you can send it to them. It's like a survey, right? And you can ask them these questions. They can fill it all out because a lot of your athletes, especially if you're working with like a 15U girls team or whatever it is, if you ask them how they're doing, they're like, I'm good, coach. And they're just not going to say anything. They're just going to be agreeable. A lot of them are. And once you start giving them surveys where they can just write in information, just kind of freely write out what they want. They know you're getting the information, but they don't have pressure on them that you're like talking them in their face. They're not in the moment, is you'll learn a lot more information about them. Okay, I can see I got some more questions here. Okay. Oh, okay, I got some questions about the slides. I'm going to see if I can share. Can I share this document in the chat form?
Yeah, give it
And
a shot, and then I'll send it out to just to people who, well, to anybody really, but people who are obviously here on the call. Yeah.
okay, let me see if I'm just not sure how I add something on here.
Oh, to the chat. You just
Yeah.
copy and paste it in the chat. The slide. We can do it at we can do it after too.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get it sent out to all you guys. I have it saved as a PDF and a slide. So maybe what I'll do is I'll send you the PDF and then it can be sent out to everyone.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, I want to leave this last like 15 minutes to any like extra questions or anything you guys have about anything I presented about. It could be about workouts, recovery, anything. If it's something I don't know about, I'll just tell you I don't know about that and you can ask someone else. But yeah, I think one of the big things that I've just noticed over the years working with a lot of club athletes is for them is communication on what you're doing and why it's important when it comes to physical training. And so it's like a lot of athletes, like they'll do these slow strength workouts and they'll be like, why am I doing this? This is boring. This sucks. Like, why am I doing this? But once they start understanding, like, being strong, being stronger is one of the best things you can do for injury prevention, right? The way you tolerate more stress is by being stronger, right? A lot of your athletes are going to want to jump higher. They're going to want to hit harder, but they got to understand, taking breaks is important for jumping higher, having enough time to recover, warming up well, just be able to present those things to them. But guys, I really highly recommend, once again, those slides, you're going to see you can have access to my YouTube channel, my Instagram page. Like I just post a ton of content there that you guys can directly steal. But if you guys don't have any questions, we'll kind of leave it there in the presentation. But what I'll do is anyone has any more questions or anything, feel free to fire away. Okay, I do got a good question. Would you differentiate pre-game workout versus pre-practice? Would you differentiate pre-game workouts versus pre-practice? I think maybe you're talking about warm-up. Yeah, for a pre-game warm-up, I generally warm up longer before a game. So I would do it just a little bit longer. I would spend a little more time, and it depends on how much time you have. So the warm-up that I put on the slides there, that would take your athletes about 12 minutes to complete that full warm-up that I put in there. That one would be the good one to do pre-practice. But when they're done that warm-up, I would still move into like their on-ball stuff, whether you do throwing variations or pepper or different, progressively build up. I would still move into your arm swing stuff. What I like when I warm up athletes in practice, if I'm going to do a formal warm-up before practice, I like to keep it at about 10 minutes. If it's before a game, I go 15 minutes. And what I do in those categories that I gave you, the general warm-up part, that's like getting your heart rate up, you have your dynamic stretches, your activation, and then you got your athletic buildup. I just add like one more minute to each category type of thing, but I'd still focus on each one. The other thing too, depending on your team, if it's a pre-game warm-up, Sometimes, especially if they're a team that gets distracted and goofy, I do less slow stuff. So I do less dynamic stretching. I do more of the activation exercise and more of the game stuff or the stuff to get stimulated. Because when you're playing a game, I think like we're trying to get them prepared to play the game. So if you notice that your team doesn't respond well to doing 10 to 15 minutes of a formal warm up where things are slow and you got to do this and then that and then that, then I would recommend adding in some games there and making it fun, like going through for some athletic movement, some other stuff, because it's not just about getting our body prepared, but you got to be mentally stimulated to play the game as well. There's this one coach, he's the strength conditioning coach for the German national team. His name's Rhett Lawson or something like that. I don't know. I follow him on social media, I exchange conversation with him. If you look at his stuff, it's so funny because like all like the, Team Japan, Team Canada, they're all like doing their very formal warm. And he's out there and they're like dancing, they're playing games, they're like hitting balloons and they're doing all this stuff. And what you see of their athletes, they're engaged, they're like stimulated, they're having fun and they're prepared. So he's doing something that's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So there's nothing wrong with making warm-ups fun if you find that works well with your team. I found, depending on the team, it was, if I'm going to do regular practice, I want my athletes to be disciplined. I want them to be able to do a formal warm, but I want to also read the room where it's like good time to add in some extra games. But when it comes to like playing a game in a match, the way that I would warm up the team is different based on how the team is and what they seem to respond to. Anyways, guys, let me know if there's any other questions. I really hope this was helpful. Once again, in the slides, I linked everything to videos because obviously I couldn't take you guys through every single video, but at least this is stuff that you can directly steal. You can take these warm-ups, you can take these workouts, and ideally you've learned a couple ways that you can kind of build out your own workouts as well. But I've really enjoyed talking with all of you, and I hope you guys find it really beneficial. I'm going to make this the last call for any questions. If you do, it's got to be written in there in the next 10 seconds. If not, guys, I really enjoyed helping you guys out, and I hope you guys can steal some of this information to apply it.
Yeah, this looks like some thank yous. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just echo that. Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks Reid for tuning in. And I think a couple of things. One of the reasons why we started doing more webinars, just so that every coach can have access, access to it, not just local, down the lower mainland or whatever. And one of the reasons why want to get you involved, and also AWA, is because you have online platforms that like beyond just this webinar, where if coaches are interested in having their teams, get into this, or individual athletes have an opportunity who maybe don't have, some clubs have like, a strength conditioning facility or whatever, and a lot of clubs don't, a lot of coaches don't. So that's also another reason, just like the amount of content you put out, but also the opportunity to maybe for some coaches, if they're interested in getting their athletes involved with you beyond this webinar. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time and spending with us. And thanks for you guys who joined the call. I don't know if there was a question that popped up after the thank yous, but yeah, next webinar, February 12th with TJ Sanders with setting. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you guys all back here in a couple weeks.
All right, guys. Thanks again. I'll see you later. I appreciate all the thank yous.